And the reality, especially with investors, like you're convincing people, it's not even necessarily your idea, it's that you'll figure it out. It's not so much that investors are looking at what your idea is, that's a huge part of it, but the ability to be able to pivot and hear what the market is saying. Things break when you scale, inevitably. If you're doing your job, then you're stressing the system you built. I think so many people make the mistake of setting up too many yeses or too many nos in their inner circle.
Welcome back to Seed Money. Today's guest is Joshua Hatter. Excited to have him on because he did something that I think a lot of people are on the fence of, what to do, how to get started, where to get their seed money from. He transformed a $30,000 401k loan into 20 plus million in real estate, in a real estate portfolio that he owns, and over 100 million that he manages. He's scaled his company, mostly, I would say, bootstrapped. We're going to get into that. Started with some seed money. And he's also raised some money around real estate that was heavily relationship driven. And more, that is the way to get funding. So I think even though, I don't really talk about real estate a lot on this podcast, but there's a lot of relevant stuff that Josh has going on, and I'm excited to get into it. So Josh, welcome. How are you?
Great. Thanks for having me. I appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, of course. So you've got a crazy background, and I think you've overcome a lot of challenges. And I think that's another thing I like to highlight in entrepreneurship, that people tend to just glaze over like, oh, so-and-so's done all this stuff and nobody sees behind the curtain. And it can make you, when you're starting out, really feel like everybody else has the secret that you don't have. But really, what it comes down to a lot of times is just pushing through. Everybody's got challenges, but let's start off, talk a little bit about, where you came from and what sparked your, pursuit of entrepreneurship.
Yeah. We can go as in-depth as you want. It's something, I think, like a lot, my background is like every type of abuse. I certainly don't shy away from it now. And really, so I'm 44. I just turned 44 last month, about 6 weeks ago. My baby daughter just came into the world 4 months ago. So it's, new phase of life for me. Just got married a couple years ago, finally. I think a lot of people shy away from talking about this stuff, and not so much now, but certainly 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30, 44 years ago, nobody talked about that stuff, right? You just kind of like grinned and bared it. And of course, we didn't have access to the world by sending a tweet or doing a Facebook post or Instagram post either. So things have kind of changed, which is good in terms of how vocal people are now. But yeah, I like to make it clear, because I think that's really a really important part of the story. There's a quote that I heard on CNBC one time. That one guy referring to another, the problem is he was born on third base and he thought he hit a triple. And I like to joke that for me with entrepreneurship, I didn't even know what sport we were playing, just because that's like the head start I got in life, which was non-existent. I was just trying to kind of lean into the pitch and, get hit so I could get on base and try to figure it out as I went along. I think at some point I learned to look at that as an extreme strength because of going through that. And like, father died in prison, all to, mental, physical abuse, sexual abuse, everything. So, like going through all of that, I think you hit a point where, no matter what you're going through, which as an entrepreneur is a lot sometimes, it's never going to be as bad as you've been through unless you let it be. And one of the problems I think with going through those things is kind of being used to chaos and then creating it, right? So you need to still separate yourself from it and kind of, be, I don't want to say unemotional about it, but be able to make good, balanced, unemotional decisions as things arise that frankly are life or death for your company. And so, it's important to me to kind of like tell that context. And I also hit a point maybe, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 years ago, where this to me is kind of part of giving back. I have had folks over the years kind of contact me and just, hey, I heard you on so and so, and I just want you to know that I don't have the courage to speak up about the things that I've been through yet. I'm getting like emotional even saying that. uh, but I just want to tell you what it meant to me, right? And so that's the whole point to me. It is kind of giving a voice to the voiceless, if you will, not to be cheesy, but it is very important to me having a daughter now, right? Particularly the older I get. So it is something that I lean into, and I'm very proud of to be able to talk about.
I think that's amazing. One, can't imagine. It's just crazy what people do go through. And I think it goes to show it's the age old, like, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. But unfortunately, I think a lot of people do get dragged down even by a lot less than what you've been through, which is crazy. I think everybody has issues, and so it's figuring out like exactly what you said, how to use those, how to pivot those and use them, you know, to your benefit and as a strength. So what would you say, like you had a corporate career, you were successful, right, in corporate America. What were the pros? What were the cons? And what was that pivot point that drove you to entrepreneurship?
Um, I don't think I ever liked it, quite frankly.
Great answer.
2020, literally almost 20 years, 19 years and 6 months, almost 20 years. Yeah, I think like, part of the issue is I never felt like I had a safety net, like literally from birth, right? And so you just live your life a different way as a result of that. Until I built my own safety net, I wasn't really willing to take the risks that every entrepreneur does, and you gotta like the money's gotta come from somewhere unless you're 18 and you don't know any difference anyway, right? But yeah, I think for me, I would try to make it work as long as I possibly could. Tried to be opportunistic when I saw things like, oh, I'd like this a little bit better than what I was doing, and kind of lean into different phases of the career. I spent a dozen of those 20 years at Fortune 500 companies. That is like the bane of my existence with all the SEC reporting. And, I mean, I felt that the last job was a Fortune, not the last, the second to last job was a Fortune 100 company. And I felt like I spent 30 hours a week just doing briefings, right? My job was business development. Like it was totally counterintuitive to what I was doing. You're not developing business behind a desk, not with what we were selling anyway. So it was just exhausting, I think. And it's cheesy, but the old adage, do what you love and you'll never work a day in your life. I think if you ever are fortunate enough to actually do that, you realize that that's true. And, for me, like that's been the last several years. I actually only quit corporate America 4 years ago in December, doing this full time. I burned the candle at both ends way too long. Totally burned out a bunch of times. I waited way too long to hire, which is really the hardest part of scaling is balancing cash flow with the growth. And I waited way too long to do it. I just kind of let the cash build. Fortunately, I am in the hospitality business, both on the real estate side and the operational side. And so that did come in handy when we experienced the worst hospitality recession in the history of mankind, as far as COVID is concerned. But yeah, it definitely is something that looking back, I wish I quit 5 to 10 years sooner, just to be able to get some of that time back.
Yeah, well, that's fair though. I mean, ultimately, you made the transition. Yeah, it's funny. I think even on like the most hectic, stressful points of your own company, what helps me gain perspective is I'm like, this is still a million times better than working for someone else. you know. Um, so tell us a little bit about. So you're in that corporate job, and then what was your first kind of, you know reaching out to start something on your own attempt?
Yeah, it was a layoff. So the first Fortune 500 company, um, laid off 700 people, of which I was one. So I got laid off with 700 of my buddies. And they split into two separate public companies, total shareholder value move, if you've ever been a part of that. But yeah, that was really it. And like after that, I wasn't ready to quit. I was able to get a severance because of the amount of people they laid off, get X number of weeks of notice and had a job within like a week just because I kind of like felt something was off. Um, but it forced me I had a 1 bedroom condo at the time. And I listed it on VRBO in 2012, long before the proliferation of Airbnb. So yeah, it has been interesting to ride that wave. I certainly recognize the importance of luck with the timing on some of the growth of this stuff, but just been really fortunate to ride that wave. And I tried to straddle the fence as long as I possibly could before quitting and doing it full time.
So you built up, so you currently have, you invest in real estate, you have real estate you own, and you have a management company, which is basically similar to what I have and have done. And so were you building the hospitality company while working a full-time job?
Yes. Yeah. So I started short-term rentals in 2012. I got shut down almost immediately. I was like that condo, the HOA defined short-term as anything less than a year. So it took me like 3 months to get shut down. But like that was kind of the first taste. And so I tried a bunch of things, as a lot of entrepreneurs do, and failed. But I just always wanted to kind of come back to something. And so I actually, February 24th, someday stick with you in life, February 24th of 2016, I came back to it and listed. By that point, I had sold the condo, moved to a single family home, and rented out a bedroom in the home, and had a new guest every 2 to 3 days in my late 20s, for the better part of 18 to 24 months, until I wound up finally moving out and converting the whole thing to a short-term rental. So I started building my investment portfolio before the hospitality company. I actually started CVP Curated Vacation Properties as an arbitrage company, which a lot of people with no money do. And that's how you get started. So I signed these couple of rental arbitrage contracts. And within like 3 months of the 24-month leases that I did on these two-bedroom condos, they got an unsolicited offer on the quadruplex. And so, I very quickly went, I get it. I'm the squeaky wheel. This is the easiest thing to solve. Like what would make me go away? So we kind of came to an agreement, and they wrote me a check for 50 grand at closing. Rental arbitrage never was comfortable to me. So, I just didn't, yeah. It's a different risk. So you have no equity upside. You don't get to write off the depreciation on your taxes. Like all the best things of real
Yeah,
estate have
totally.
nothing to do with rental arbitrage, right? And then immediately, this was around like Memorial Day that year. And the new owner called me as soon as they closed, and they were like, "We have a problem. Can we meet?" So we met for coffee, and they said, "Our furniture's not coming till after Labor Day." And so that's peak season here. Okay, cool. Let's cut a deal. I ran that through and then moved everything out Labor Day, and literally on Labor Day, and wound up selling off the furniture and stuff. And so I had like $75,000, and I was like, I'm going to switch this to a traditional property management company. Let's kind of make this a little. I'm glad I wasn't holding any arbitrage contracts going into COVID, but let's make this a little less risky. So I signed my first traditional property management contract where you take a percentage of the revenue that you earn in January of 2019. That client's still with me today, and he actually just signed a 3-year renewal. So like every time I talk to him or about him, I give him this like massive deference. Like there's no reason he ever should have gone, with me. Like our very first month, he's like, "Well, what exactly do your owner reports look like?" And I'm like, "What do you want it to look like?" So it was, it's come a long way. We did $10.1 million in bookings last year under the management company. We've got like 22, 23 full-time employees now. So hosted over 25,000 guests. So very, have come very far since that journey. But as with every entrepreneur, there are a handful of people that you just would not exist today if it were not for them. And he was one of them for me.
Oh, that's very cool. Yeah, I think similar to, people going out to pitch investors and raise money, a lot of times it is a numbers game because you're looking for that person who's just willing to give you a chance. They just see something in you, and it's really hard to anticipate who's going to be that person. So sometimes you just got to go knock on a lot of doors because there's no, to your point, there's no reason he should have gone with you. I'm sure there were plenty of established companies, but he just, for some reason, felt a connection and said, I'm going to give this guy a chance. And that is like the beginning for so many people. And it's so important to understand that it's okay that a lot of people are not going to do that because you're just looking for the people who will do that. So I love that. I think that's such an important mindset to go into, starting a new business. It's like you're looking for that customer who's willing to take a chance on you, that investor, that employee who's willing to work for a little bit of, stock options. I think the beginning of business is all about those people who are kind of willing to give you a shot. What would you say? So from there, so amazing. You've scaled that, which hats off to you because it is a crazy little business. That's for sure. We're only doing, we do just over 3 million in revenue. And I've balanced, scaling with, I like my life the way it is. And, so those things. So talk to us a little bit about, but even with the amount of growth I've, had in this business, I feel like there's still a, build, stabilize, kind of pattern. And I think that's an important pattern in all business because I have done it the wrong way where I just pushed and didn't stabilize and I burnt out. So talk to us a little bit about how you've scaled and just kind of advice you have for early stage entrepreneurs because when you're going out to pitch investors, you've got to sell them on this big, like, we're going to grow to 10 million in the next, few years, we're going to grow to 100 million. And I think investors, they've been through it, they know all the tripping points. What advice do you have for people on how to approach scaling, like, your own mindset, and also kind of conveying that to someone that you're telling that you're capable of doing this,
Oh, totally. Yeah. I mean, you can't sell anything you don't believe in. Right. So, that's the biggest thing. I mean, I was in sales for almost 20 years, supporting the federal government. And it just got, some of the taxpayer waste that I saw, it didn't make sense to me. And it's hard to lean into something if you're not fully committed to what the outcome, whether it's a product or services. So if I don't believe in my own company, then, we got a whole different problem. But, as an entrepreneur, especially like early, so like all of the emotions are so normal in terms of like self-doubt, right? And the reality, especially with investors, like you're convincing people that you're it's not even necessarily your idea, it's that you'll figure it out, right? Because like ideas pivot a million times before you find product market fit. Obviously, that in terms of me with real estate, not the path that I took in terms of like scaling some $1 billion tech company. But it's not so much that investors are looking at what your idea is. That's a huge part of it. But the ability to be able to pivot and hear what the market is saying. That's why, to your point, that track record, a lot of the investors have all done it before. They know, right? What you originally thought was your $1 billion idea or $100 million idea has nothing to do with where you ultimately wind up. I think being able to listen to the market and that flexibility is huge, especially early. For me, I mean, having somebody that was kind of a raging fan, maybe even before I knew it, and really leaning into him and his accountant as we developed a lot of the initial standard operating procedures. It was huge for me. I think it kept me alive in the early days. Overnight, everything went from assets to liabilities during COVID. So, we went from we're making money with these properties to now we have to guard from theft and damage, making sure that people don't break in and squat. So overnight, the whole mission changed, and we're talking to the handful of owners that we had then, just trying to make sure we didn't lose anybody. What federal loan options, PPP, and what things are available, in order to just kind of keep them afloat as investors as well too. So it was that was also interesting. I think, yeah, to your point, you kind of figure it out right as you go along, and it's just being able to kind of morph to whatever the market is telling you at the time, whether it's good or it's bad. And inevitably, it will be both, right? I like to say, nothing good lasts forever and nothing bad lasts forever. And so, particularly when it's good, right? Because you can kind of see like the elation on people's faces, your team around you, and it's just, man, this can't get any better, right? Nothing good lasts forever, nothing bad lasts forever. Um, as far as just kind of taking that pause to fix things, if you will, things break when you scale inevitably, because you're building this system to withstand a certain amount of stress. And inherently, as a CEO, you're selling your own product or service. So if you're doing your job, then you're stressing the system you built. And so at some point, if you don't, unless, you are a tech company, you're trying to scale to X and then exit, and even then, God forbid you lose some of those clients along the way, right? Um, you've got to be able to hit that plateau, reassess. Let me look at everything. Let me fix what I broke, and then kind of go to that next plateau. And again, I think maybe not so much the market, although the market will tell you if you wait too long, because things will be broken and your clients will leave you. But I think more so the system will tell you, right? Whether it's you lose a good person, something breaks that would never have broken when you were half the size. It's really kind of, I think that's so much of being an entrepreneur, is listening to everything around you, the market on the external side, your employees, your team on the internal side. And then being able just to kind of look at cash flow and balance that as well too. You could be the greatest salesperson in the world, but if you can't retain your clients over a period of time, it doesn't really matter. So, I think balancing cash flow with scale is arguably the hardest thing that I've ever done, and I'm saying that even being a new dad.
So I agree with you 100% there. At what point did you hire or get someone managing the finances to go, okay, we need to, have a good grasp on this? Because I think it is, even if you are in a profitable industry like real estate, and there's a lot of I was in consumer products where there are points when you just have to go raise money for inventory and stuff like that. But there's a lot of tech companies that can bootstrap, but you can only bootstrap if you're really good with your finances, right? So talk to us a little bit about what does that look like from a finance perspective and managing that, and who did you engage and when to make sure you were able to kind of stay afloat?
Yeah, that was really an interesting process too. I think it kind of slapped me in the face at some point. But yeah, I mean, I've had the same CPA for close to a decade, literally like coming from corporate America. So he's kind of like seen the little, in fact, the joke is when I reach out to the staff accountant, of his that works on my account, each year she'll be like, is there a new LLC that we need to start up in our system? So, they've been with me for a little while, and you kind of like get people that understand you and your rhythm and how you think. But on the financial side specifically, it was about, I would say, like 3 to 4 years ago. I mean, we did it way too late. The management company was probably doing like $1.5–2 million in bookings. By the time we switched over to QuickBooks, believe it or not. I would never recommend this to anybody, just like your financial advisor would never recommend that you take a 401k loan to do some of the things that I've done. So, that was an interesting exercise, and we converted everything at the same time. The management company was by far the biggest thing, and now there's 1,000 or more transactions a month. So it's a lot. I think like once we went through that exercise, which took 6 months just for the management company, after we converted, she was like, you know, you have a remarkable handle on this for not even having the visibility. And she finished that by saying, but I don't know how you sleep at night. I will tell you, I slept a lot better after that.
Yeah.
But yeah, she actually, and that came, she lives in Phoenix and she's my fractional CFO and she's across everything that I have, and has been now for 3 or 4 years. But that actually came from a recommendation when I informally started my mentorship group. With the very first group, he was like, "Oh, you should talk to this person," and she was managing his books. And she just quit corporate America in the last 18 months. She has 80 clients for her fractional CFO company. I'm her largest client, and I referred her second largest client, which I have to give myself a little pat on the back for, but she is absolutely amazing. Yeah, as an entrepreneur, there's certain things that you're just not going to change, right? And so as you're building, I'm like snickering here as I'm thinking of a couple of things specifically, but as you're building this inner circle, you have to get these people that like really jive with you and they believe in what you're building as well too, right? Because they're investing their own time and money into you, even if they're being paid for it. It doesn't do any good for somebody as a fractional CFO to lean in entirely and then your business goes bust in 5 months, right? So there's a vested interest, even though she's being paid for it. But yeah, it's been an interesting journey with her. I think she probably would say the same with some of the stuff we've gone through in the last year together. But she also came from kind of a big tech / big accounting corporate background. She also spent 18 years doing accounting at Four Seasons, so she understands the hospitality accounting aspect as well too. So yeah, it's been an interesting journey with her as well. But that was about like just in the last 3 or 4 years. I'm almost embarrassed to say that we switched everything to QuickBooks.
Yeah, but what's funny is I think that touches on something where when you're just entrepreneurship in general and when you're scaling, and I'm seeing this with people right now who are they're a little bit afraid to go out and pitch investors, and you have to get really, really comfortable with not being perfect and with just like being okay with screwing up to some degree. I still have a hard time with this. I think I'm by nature, I have a perfectionist, like I strive for perfection. And I recognize when that is stressing me out. And then I have to just go, there's no way to do this perfect. There's just zero way to do it perfect. It doesn't exist. And I think with scaling, that's a big part of it. That's a hard part, is that you have to be, like, to your point, you're stressing your system. The nature of that is stuff is going to break and you have to be okay with that, which can be really, really tough. And to recognize that that's actually a good thing, right? It's not
Totally,
even like tough. It's actually a good thing. You need to do that. What
totally.
are some of the things, like, what do you do, on the day to day to just stay focused on the positive and, push through those things?
Yeah, you know, the older I've gotten, the more impact matters to me. So I kind of mentioned authenticity being one of my core values. Um, it's so clarity, authenticity, adaptability, growth, and impact are my personal core values. If the folks listening haven't done this core values exercise, in fact, I keep it on my desk here. But if you've ever read The One Thing, there's a little cube that comes with us. And I had a marketing company actually take me through that now, probably 3 years ago or so. But once you identify that, if you're honest with yourself as you go through that exercise, um, it becomes a lot easier to say no, which includes things like your inner circle. So, there has to be a balance. I think so many people make the mistake of setting up too many yeses or too many nos in their inner circle. And so, with entrepreneurs, unfortunately, the people that are the most disparaging or negative oftentimes are your best friends, your inner friend group, or your family immediate family, that are disparaging about what you're trying to do. And we almost have to will these things into existence, right? Um, there's some luck and timing involved, of course, but a lot of it's like just sheer will and trying to remain overwhelmingly positive, even in the face of negativity. And so there has to be a balance of yes and no. You can't just have the friend group that's gassing you up on like, that's amazing. It's the stupidest idea that's ever been marketed, right? I mean, there's got to be like a healthy feedback loop there. But it's such a tough balance. And I feel really fortunate, particularly the older I get, that my like core, not just CPA, CFO, those folks, personal attorney, those things, but even just like the core friend group. I mean, we have an accountability session every Monday. We're all across the country, with a Zoom call. My core family in Charleston, South Carolina. I mean, it just being able to run things by people and have them have not unbiased opinion, but a balance between um, amazing, overwhelming positivity and just inherently negative is really difficult. So yes, and I think avoiding that negativity as well too, is probably one of the most difficult pieces of being an early entrepreneur, just because the no's can come sometimes, or oftentimes even come from people that mean the most to you, and that hurts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've definitely had that. Yeah. Those aren't fun.
You're
Oh my
crazy.
God.
What are you doing? Why would you give up this corporate America career?
Oh God. Yeah, I know. And that's the one where later on, you're just like, oh my gosh, you hear that. And it's like, the perspective has shifted so much at that point. It's like, why
Right.
would you stay?
Yeah.
That's amazing.
That's another piece. That's why things like this are important to me. I mean, I mentor college kids. Giving. I realized a long time ago that just writing a check is never going to cut it for me in terms of the giving back, part of life. And I would much rather pick a smaller group of people that I feel like, my ripple effect, if you will, in life, can extend further, than just, broadly speaking, um, trying to like write a check and not follow up on it. So it's something that I take really seriously. And, having been there with that negativity, just trying to be able to lean into that and help people realize what they want to do. And kind of achieve their dreams. So it's something that I take really seriously at this age.
That's amazing. I love that. So with that, I think that anybody who has any entrepreneurial drive at all should be in some sort of real estate at some point, preferably earlier than later. I, bought a triplex in my early 20s, and I wish I had kept growing that real estate portfolio all through my 30s, but I didn't. So is what it is. But with that, I think it's real estate. A lot of entrepreneurs, I mean, I think you have two sides of it. I have this mission, I have this dream, I have to make this thing happen. But typically, along with that, is this in the back of your head? I also want more out of life. I want to build wealth, and I want to, create something. And a lot of times financial benefit goes along with that, creation, especially if you're more like business driven versus, I mean, I think it's amazing. We need nonprofits. But a lot of people are more business driven, and that's okay too. And real estate is such an incredible way to build wealth. So tell us a little bit about your mentorship group and what you do and how you help people and all that good stuff. Because I think they don't teach us this. I think you have your MBA, right? I spent a
I
ridiculous
do,
amount of
yeah.
money on an MBA. And I think I took one real estate class in my MBA program. I wish I did the whole, MBA in real estate, but you just don't learn this stuff typically in college. So, thankful to people like you who are doing things like this. So tell us a little bit about that and, what that looks like and how you, help people
Sure,
to
yeah.
get started.
Sure. Yeah. So yeah, there's a lot to unpack there. So, one of my core managers at the management company, just turned 21 recently in the last like 6 months. And, her only experience was as a hostess, walking in. And, watching the growth like over the last 18 months. And we literally just had a management meeting this morning, kind of going through some strategic things, but like just seeing the wheels turn and just like, I really truly spend a lot of time kind of mentoring the key folks in businesses that I have at this point. So it's really interesting to kind of see that progression. I had that conversation with her actually, right? So she came to me young and didn't go to school. And she totally asked that question. Like, I feel like I should go back. Like, how can I make this job work? Like, can I go back to school at night? Like, what does this look like? I thought about it a lot. Obviously I would love to support that if she ever wanted to lean into it. But the reality is she's proven herself so much already with where the company is. I looked at it through the lens of what you just said, which I have at MBA, right? And I'm like, I didn't learn any of this stuff in business school. And like what you're exposed to now and process and strategy and being able to, like, you can put your imprint on a company at 21. Like that's not a thing, on a $10 million company. So, yeah, I mean, it's interesting to kind of have that perspective. And so leaning more into that, I started actually put out a LinkedIn post. But I guess, maybe 3 years ago now, and just told people like, hey, I'm willing to give back. I really want to do this. This is something that's been kind of on my heart lately. And I had probably a dozen people respond and had conversations. One of my big things is extreme transparency and extreme accountability. And quite frankly, like if people don't want those things in their lives, I'm not for you because I'm probably way too intense. But on the transparency, if you're not very honest with where you are, then you're probably not going to be honest with where you're trying to be, much less the time frame you're trying to get there. And you're certainly not going to be like held accountable in weekly meetings with me asking like, how's this going? So it just like kind of weeds out a lot of people. I had a couple of folks that just, with the situation they were in, they're like, I hear you and I don't necessarily disagree with you, but I'm just not comfortable because I'm embarrassed of the situation. Right. And so, you know, unfortunately that does happen a lot as well too. But I took this initial group of 3 people and we started meeting every week as a group and every other week individually. We still do the same thing and chat with each other. And over that time, at some point, I just said, "Hey, what if we formalize this? Oh well, what would that look like? What if we did it as a nonprofit? Like, there's so many masterminds out there. I'm a part of a mastermind called GoBundance, which is mostly real estate." And that's been huge in my life. And so, looking at like, well, what can make me different? I think I got to the point where for me, I was, I don't want to say discouraged, almost like angry is a better way to put it. But you would see these like Instagram reels or YouTube videos of like, oh, I did this thing and I launched this rental arbitrage STR and I made all of this money and now you can buy my course for $4.99. And I'm just like, "Oh, you started in 2021. You don't even know what it was like during COVID, and you did it one time." So it just like I hit a point where I'm like, this is like, it's almost harmful information that people, even with the best of intentions, right? And so with this core group, I just told them, look, I'll give you any asset that I've created over this, X number of years building this company, checklist, processes, tell you good things and bad things about different technology platforms that I've used. But if you ever steal a client from me, I'll kill you, was kind of the joke. And one of the guys, has since sold his rental arbitrage portfolio and he now buys hotels across the country, has gotten married and had a little girl, and moved outside of Zion National Park. So I honestly, and his recommendation was for the CFO. So quite frankly, I think I probably learned more from him now than he does for me as I'm trying to buy boutique hotels. It's like so cool just to have that chat with him and see how far things have come. And then second person bought a beach house with her dad on Isle of Palms here. And they had already had a property, a short-term rental in North Charleston. But she's since gone through and kind of launched that brand. And the third guy actually works for me. So
Wow.
it's, he's worked for me now full time for 2 months. And I've gone through a lot of stuff here personally where, um, he's 39 actually. He would kill me if I said he was 40. He's 39 and he has been so positive with some of the negativity that I've had, trying to fester on some of the things that we're building. That it's been a huge I texted him this morning just telling him how grateful I was for him. I try not to be shy with that stuff too, because that stuff really matters in life. And sometimes you don't get as many chances as you think you would, to say those things. So, that has been a huge positive influence, and he's been in this mastermind group for 3 years. So at some point in year two, we said, hey, what if we formalize this? And so we kind of stood up the infrastructure and the brand and all that stuff. It took a full 2 years to get 501c3 approval from the IRS.
Whoa.
So we just got the letter. Yeah. One of my folks was like, there's something from the IRS here, which is like scary to most people, right? It sounded like, whoa, what could that be? And I get there and I'm like, keys? There's no way. And literally, like my CPA, my financial advisor, my attorney, and my CFO all were like, there's no way you get 501 for this. So yeah, it took 2 years, but we did get an IRS approved 501c3 nonprofit through it. So now the next phase is starting to look at grant writers, executive director, because I do want to continue to invest in that. Honestly, I'd almost gotten to the point where I thought we might never get it. So, and of
Wow.
course, the IRS isn't exactly communicating as they're going along too. They just send you the approval or denial letter, which we got about 8 denial letters too, by the way,
Oh my God,
asking
I love
for clarifications on things. So we just stuck with it, and it took like 22, 23 months in its entirety. So that's something that we're kind of leaning into as well now. I'm really looking forward to scaling it. It's something that is really important to me. And I think it just, in terms of my legacy and being able to kind of pay it forward and be that positivity, and hope where people may not necessarily have that in other places of their life that are close to them, like I said before. So that's a huge piece of it. The other thing that I want to touch on that you said earlier, as far as owning real estate, I work for a guy in my mid 20s. I mean, arguably the best CEO I worked for in the defense industry. He sold his company for $80 million. One of the nicest, most down to earth guys I've met in my life. And built and sold a second company after that. But one of the things he said to me is that you need to own the office space that you're in, because so many entrepreneurs, you kind of hinted at this, but so often entrepreneurs will put themselves last. Leaders eat last, right? And so often entrepreneurs, they're so focused on making this thing work that they have nothing else here to fall back on. And that's part of the reason it works sometimes, right? But his whole thing was like, you got to own this so that, at least you're paying off the mortgage over time. And even if you don't do anything else in life and your company goes bust, you still have that real estate to go with it. So I think that is really important. And I kind of am doing the same thing now as well with the CVP office. So I think that is great advice. And I think all too often entrepreneurs wind up, if you're doing it right, you're putting yourself last trying to make things work. Just can't forget about the family.
Yeah, totally. And it just doesn't have to be that way. I agree. There's been
Totally.
this kind of mindset around you have to risk everything and put everything on the line. And there are times
Social media.
we all do that.
That's how
Yeah,
I know I'm
exactly.
old.
That's where
You
that's
say
coming
that, I'm
from.
like, social media. It's
Yeah.
pervasive.
Yeah, totally. But, I think there are ways to be smart and to have multiple things going on. And I think, again, you can have, it's funny because I found myself in this real estate, space now, which doesn't, I love real estate. It's fun. I love doing the renovations, but it doesn't like feed my soul the way, my first company did. But I'm able to do other things that do that, like this podcast and stuff like that. So likewise, you can have the thing that feeds your soul, but you can also have something else on the side that is kind of
100%.
setting yourself up for, long-term wealth building, and kind of, it doesn't even have to be framed as like a backup plan. It's just like, I'm going to have, multiple streams of income in my life. And back to your way original point of, in corporate, never felt secure. I totally agree with that. And to me and my husband, we're the same way, where we feel like you could drop us, in the middle of nowhere with not a dime, and we know we can figure it out. You know what I mean? And so I think there's something to be said for building your own security, and real estate's a great way to do that, and not that difficult. And I think it's funny too. A lot of people see it as risky, but it's really not that risky if you're.
There's an underlying asset tied to it.
Yeah,
That asset will never go to zero. Your company can. That's just the
exactly.
reality.
Yeah. Yeah. But I think, finding somebody trustworthy, that kind of has been through it. And so like what you're doing, I think is amazing. So congrats. Very cool.
Thank you.
Anything
I
else you
appreciate
want to
it.
share that,
No, just, I guess to your last point, the other thing too, as far as entrepreneurship, most people aren't Zuckerberg or Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos, right? Like, you're not founding this company and building it to $1 trillion. And the reality is, like, that journey is very different at different phases. And guess what? You're not going to love, if you are fortunate enough to grow your company to a certain phase, you're not going to like it, because it's that startup mentality is so different than, it's the whole, like, what it took you to get to 1 million, is not the same as what it takes you to get to 10 and 10 to 20 and 20 to 100, right? Like, it changes over time. The upside of entrepreneurship is you don't necessarily have to change with it. You can decide, like, I don't want that for my life. I can either hire a CEO or exit, or, to your point, I can just maintain and find that other thing that feeds my soul. And there's nothing wrong. There's no wrong answer. That's kind of the beauty of it. So yeah, that's a very fortunate position, I think, to be in as an entrepreneur. And something that, whether we know it or not, all of us strive to hit, is just to be able to make that decision.
Totally. Yeah. And I think that's another thing that I'm thankful there is a lot more just people promoting that success doesn't have to be selling your company for $100 million. I still
Exactly.
hear, and this comes from VCs, because for them, success is that unicorn
Right.
company.
Yep.
But they like impose that metric of success on every other startup. And I think it's just one of the worst crimes out there,
100%.
because does not equal success. There are so many other things that play into success of personal happiness, security, there's just so many, personal
Totally.
health, like a million things. So I appreciate transparency and people doing that, because I think we need a lot more of that to outweigh this
Yes.
chatter out there that you're only successful if you reach this one financial milestone. Is just total BS.
I
So
I I will think that I don't have a true grasp on the world or myself if I'm ever not a part of the vocal minority. So I'm okay. I'm okay with that. But yeah, there's definitely not enough people screaming that through a bullhorn.
yeah, totally agree. Amazing. Okay, so if someone wants to stay in one of your properties or hotels, what's the name of your company? What's the name of your mastermind? Share a little, where can people learn more about you and connect with you?
Sure. Yeah. The easiest way personally is you can email josh@joshhatter.com, which is on the screen now, or go to the website. And I actually, believe it or not, have a link to book time with me as well, which I don't know how long that's going to last. I'm really proud of that. So I'm making it last as long as I can. The nonprofit mastermind is Keys Collective, and that's just keyscollective.org. And if somebody's ever in Charleston, Isle of Palms, Folly Beach, or Savannah, Georgia, stay CVP, STAY, CVP as in curated vacation properties.com. You can book with us. I'd love to keep in touch with people and help out wherever I can. And I truly mean that.
Amazing. Well, congrats on all the success and the new little one at home. I'm sure you're
Thank you.
exhausted. We'll let you go and rest.
She's great.
Amazing. Thank you, Josh. This was so fun.
Thank you.
Great to connect. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.